Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you, and I hope you've been well since I last saw you, because it has been 6 days resultant primarily of the mic cable, but that is now changed and a video. This is being filmed before Nottingham Forest versus Brentford and shall be out afterwards. So in team selection and you're solving your problems, I can react to Mbeumo's performance particularly. I guess Forest is as well, given what we're looking at in terms of FPL coming up, and I will have a reflection then tomorrow on the free hit. I'll save it until Mbeumo plays. Today I have for you a look at captaincy, Saka's expected minutes, the best players to buy, and new chip strategies following the fact that there are no double or blank game weeks. If you've been enjoying the content around here, then make sure to subscribe and like the video if you enjoy it. But without anything else needing to be said, let's get back into it. Now, this won't need to be a particularly long section because it's rather self-explanatory. However, there shall be no blank or double game weeks left in this season. Now, in the title, it says that Aston Villa versus Spurs is to be confirmed. Simply, I put that there because they haven't got a post out themselves. But as you can see in the graphic, the fixture says that it's going to remain in 37. So it's either very, very, very likely that it will, or definitely that it's going to stay in 37. And you can certainly assume that to be the case. And as such, you don't need to premeditate whether the likes of Bournemouth will double or which Manchester City trio to have for the rest of the season, and so on and so on. You can kind of just play old school FPL, I would say, straight shootout for 4 weeks. Everyone's got the same amount of fixtures. Everyone will play every week. And you can just kind of take the players you want without thinking about who's going to double and blank down the line. Those more strategic type of moves, which for me is FPL that I really, really enjoy in particular. And yeah, that's that. We will move on to now chip strategy, because I imagine it certainly would have changed. For example, bench boost 36 is no longer what it once was, and so on and so on. So we'll touch on that first before moving into the players themselves specifically. So what new chip strategies are available to yourself? And it's not necessarily a bad thing that, you know, double game week 36 got taken away from you, because I really do think that game week 38 is a very underrated opportunity to play a variety of chips. Firstly, the triple captain. Now, I think in 38, it's a wonderful strategy. You've got Saka away at Southampton, you've got Bournemouth assets at home to Leicester, and you've got what I'll call beach ball. There is more goals in this game week every single year than there are in all of the other game weeks, right? On average. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the mentality. And it's the only real thing that would make sense, because what changes from game week to 37 to 38 in terms of like physical capacity or just quality in general, right? Not too much. So I would say that where you can almost guarantee that you're going to get more goals, and thus your ceiling and floor is raised for all your good players in particular, it makes sense to do it here, because it's almost like 1.5 times game weeks as opposed to a single or a double. I'd say it's more like 1.5, just given you know that the floor and ceilings are higher. And here's both, and that's a really big thing. Of course, you could play it earlier if you have a really strong feeling about one particular game, you really like a matchup, and so on, then yeah, by all means, I think it makes sense to go and play the triple captain earlier. But if not, I think 38 is the strongest game week to play pretty much any chip. And that goes for the bench boost and free hit as well, right? Because I think in general, with the way that the fixtures are set up and how our teams are currently set up, the squad compositions in 38 in general look very strong. So you could add to that with your bench, and again, there's more goals. So maybe you have a defender that you really like, you think they'll keep a clean sheet, but also they could score in that game week. You maybe even have to hit them in, and so on and so on. And the upside of your bench boost increases. If not, I think like 37 and 36 look cool from what I've seen as well. And if you wildcard at 34, maybe you're kind of geared toward 36 anyway, so you may as well just play it. And then lastly, the free hit. Again, I think that it's a great opportunity if this is like the only chip you have left, because of certain like spots you can exploit. Let's just say, for example, Liverpool versus Palace, right? Now, it's very unlikely that Palace are going to be, not very unlikely, but it's unlikely Palace will be fighting for anything. Let's just say Liverpool have been drinking all week, right? Most of them. All of a sudden, Liverpool on the beach, Palace go there, tails up, win 3-0. Very unlikely, all of this, but you get the point. You can take this and apply it to a more realistic situation. And all of a sudden, having triple Palace, which no one's going to have, could be a huge differential and a massive positive. And it's just spots like this which I think can be exploited in game week 38. So, to round up, I would say really look at 38 as your best week to play a chip. But if not, I think there's certainly value in 37 and 36 for bench boost and free hit. And then the triple captain in general, I think, is very much, if not 38, where you have a strong feeling. Forest have Leicester at home, 36, must-win game. Maybe you go Chris Wood. Okay, fine, he might not set the world alight in that game. Maybe he gets like even like a 12-pointer would be great. And then, you just accept that. That would outscore, for example, Alexander Isak in game week 32. And I think you would have done well in comparison to the field to have done that. Someone who is very highly owned is Bukayo Saka. And the big question is, do you start him in your 11? Because does he start against Bournemouth or not? Now, I would say, considering the injury that he came back from, it really doesn't look like he came back from that type of injury. He looks much better, considering the timescale as well, than you would expect someone to look. I did not expect him to be this sharp coming back, right? So that's a great sign in general for his overall level of fitness. And we've seen in the past his capacity to play minutes again and again and again and again in a very intense schedule, right? And then when you look at it, it's a Tuesday-Wednesday split. So he's got an 8-day gap, which is a big deal, right? It's not like it's a short gap. It's like a 4 or 5 day turnaround with a game in the middle. No, it's a good 8-day gap. And as such, I think there's a decent chance he starts Bournemouth. Again, he's probably not 100. No, he isn't 100% considering when he came back from his injury. But maybe if he's like 70% of the way there, I think just getting maybe 60 minutes in his legs, especially against an intense Bournemouth side who provide you with something not super different to PSG. Okay, fine, it's not PSG, but it's not going to be what Leicester or Southampton provide you with, or other good sides in the Premier League, what they provide you with, because of Bournemouth's slightly unique play style, right? And I think getting him better adapted to that, and also his body better adapted to that following the injury, isn't a bad shout. And as such, I personally think he starts and gets about 60-ish, maybe a little bit more. And I think there's a decent chance of that. But that's just it, decent. Because he could just be like, okay, it's going to be an intense game. I don't really want to risk him. We'll keep him for the Parc des Princes and go from there. But I do personally think he starts. The other thing you have to consider with his benching is he has one of the higher floors, and certainly one of the higher floors, if not one of the highest floors in the game, and one of the higher ceilings in the game. And are you comfortable benching that, knowing that the downside is so large, and the guy you're likely to replace him with in your starting 11 probably doesn't carry the same amount of upside? Like Morgan Rogers doesn't usually haul massive. You'd probably be starting him over Saka in many cases if you are to bench him. Is it really worth it? Example, and then Bournemouth aren't in the best form either, right? It's not, I think when people are talking about Bournemouth, they're still viewing them in the light of when they were running really hot in the Premier League, and that hasn't been the case for a while now. So with that in mind, I think there are definitely points on offer here for Saka, and I would only be benching him if you're very confident of a benching. If not, I think it makes more sense to start, given the dynamics of how far the games are apart, his injury status and how good he's looked since coming back from that, and just in general, his ceiling and floor. I must say, I do think the mic quality has improved since switching cables, so let me know if you think that down in the comment section below. Moving on to the best players to buy this game week, and that seems like a slide that we haven't seen in so long. Honestly, I don't remember the last time I had a slide like this, and it is really what I enjoy in FPL, especially when it comes to making content about, as opposed to the more strategic moves given the doubles and blanks that are to follow. This is what I would say the player pool to pick from is, and I don't think this part is overly complicated. From the midfielders, I think you're very much looking at Jarrod Bowen, Bryan Mbeumo, and Kevin De Bruyne, and that seems to be general consensus in the community. And likewise with the forwards, Ollie Watkins, following Marcus Rashford's injury, and hence the security of minutes up top. Johan Wissa, given pretty much everything. And then two who aren't there as much is Matthias Cunha, number one, and I think he warrants consideration, given the type of player, given the quality of player almost. And then also Chris Wood. I have him in brackets here because I just want to see Forest a little bit more before I say, okay, yeah, I'm comfortable going there. We will start with the midfielders, and we will actually start with Kevin De Bruyne. I think even though Haaland's back and Rodri's back, Rodri doesn't impact it too much, but with Haaland being back and the fact that he can play like Marmoush and Haaland together in the middle, thereby taking a spot out for De Bruyne, I don't think that's likely to happen. He's not going to start Wolves. He's not going to probably start Southampton. And then you've only got 2 games left after that. They could pretty much have top 4 wrapped up by that point. And is it really worth it? Especially given you've got the Club World Cup as well. Probably not. So I would say his expected minutes and the fact that he didn't start the Cup are very good going forward, right? And he's got a pretty decent run. Like Southampton away is a really decent run. Almost like a goodbye game for him to get one last big haul and finish, if like close to finish on a high note. I like De Bruyne. I think the prospects are good. And honestly, I think he might even be a better buy now than he was ahead of 33, simply due to the, I'd say, increased security and expected minutes, to an extent, at least, over the next 2. I don't love the Wolves fixture, and we'll touch on that in the captaincy section. But overall, I think he's a good buy. However, I do think that Jared Bowen and Brian Mbeumo are both better buys. I think high floor assets, Brian Mbeumo in particular, high ceiling. I do personally prefer Bowen's fixtures for when like the games fall. But like I think it's very, 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 very close, regardless. And yeah, there's honestly not pretty much anything negative to say about either of the two. And there's a reason, it's very much general consensus to buy both. And we'll touch on both of them in the captaincy section in greater depth. Forwards, however, is far more interesting. I like the look of Ollie Watkins as a buy. I think especially because quite a few teams on the beach, whereas Villa pretty much fighting for everything. I feel like he kind of has a point to prove. I think he's a really, really good player. And every time he actually gets minutes in FPL, he's done fantastically well. If you look at his like minutes to points distribution this season compared to others, it's even better than I think most would expect. So for me, and where the exit routes aren't too difficult as well, I like this a lot. Wissa, very much similar to Mbeumo in the sense that obviously they've got the same fixtures, play for the same team, and so on and so on. They've been so dangerous as a pair. So I feel like I don't need to go into this too much. I like it. I think for me personally, the prioritization of transfers should be in the midfield / Watkins, just given the higher upside, unique opportunities that they present you. But there's nothing I can really say that's too bad about Yohan Wissa. He's been brilliant for me this season. Good news there more so on quality. Right, anything can happen in that game at the Etihad, and we will touch on it a little bit more with Kevin De Bruyne. But this is more so if you just fancy a guy who's in very good form. Like ever since he's come back from that suspension, I think he's returned in every single game, 3 on the trot, and just very, very good at football, as I've said many a time this season. So if that's the case and you want to go there, I don't think it's unjustifiable. Would, like I said earlier in the section, I just want to see him first before I say, yeah, I think this is a good opportunity. They're obviously fighting for top 4, top 5, and I think that's a big thing, just not being on the beach, as well as having that Leicester at home fixture in 36. So let's see how tonight goes. Let's see how things develop, but he certainly could be good and underrated buy. Now let's move on to captaincy. And for me, there are there are 5 contenders in particular, and we shall view them across 2 different slides, just so I can get all the information on one. They are Jared Bowen, Kevin De Bruyne, Alexander Isak, Brian Mbeumo, and Mohamed Salah. And we will start with the guy who we started with on the last slide, and that is De Bruyne. As I said, good expected minutes, rested, fairly healthy version of himself at home, right? In general, a very good prospect, especially when you consider he's playing a side who are in the bottom half of the table. However, I wouldn't say it's as good of a prospect as maybe this has been in the past when these variables are present, nor as maybe it is interpreted. Because 1, City aren't blowing teams away. 2, he's not his former self, whereby you can be somewhat expectant of a haul. I really don't think you can be. A return, yeah, sure, to a much greater extent. But I just don't think the floor nor the ceiling's anywhere near what it used to be. I think Vitor Pereira has done a really good job. And Wolves aren't that easy to just blow away as well, right? So for me, I think it's a big risk. And as such, I personally would be straying away. I don't think it's bad, like I said. And again, the fact that he's a mid certainly helps. But for me, I personally wouldn't go there. I also don't think they keep a clean sheet. So that takes away one other potential point as well. Isak, a big thing is the fact that he's not firing on all cylinders. Eddie Howe spoke about this in a press conference today, I think. He said he's basically like 1 or 2% off, and everyone goes through peak and troughs. And he might just not be in that vein of form where you can kind of just expect a haul. Maybe it's just kind of going against him at the moment. And as such, do you really need to bet here where there are other better options who are potentially higher ceiling as well? I don't think so. The other thing is, it's the type of game that Brighton would just find some form. Like, obviously, they got that 3-2 win at West Ham in such late fashion. And the fact that they did, I think, gives them nice momentum to potentially try and get a European place for the rest of the season. Even though stylistically it's quite a good game, I personally just don't feel overly comfortable betting here. And Brighton have a tendency to not maybe perform as well as they would like in games you would expect them to, but in these bigger games be quite difficult to beat. I know that sentence is incomplete on the Isak slide, by the way, on the Isak section, but it's very much just talking about what Eddie Howe said and what I just said about his form. And lastly, Mohamed Salah. Liverpool are definitely on the beach. All you have to do is look at some of their players' Instagram stories. For example, my friend telling me McAllister's, and there's just some alcohol in there. So without the strength of desire to win, Chelsea needing to win, and the fact that the bridge will be really up for it, and the fact that some of them are quite simply just drinking and won't be in like the shape you want them to be. I think once, like in a season gone by, we saw Trent maybe not at 100% after a few too many. Just don't think you want to be betting here. I don't think it's bad. I just personally think there are other opportunities on the next slide. that are better to go for. It also hasn't really been going his way as of late. Even against Spurs, like he only walks away with an 8-pointer. Given Spurs a performance, and even given Liverpool's performance, that should have been one where I think he should have got a lot more. And it kind of just seemed to evade him certain opportunities. So Bosler probably should have put one away for a Salah assist in the second half, and so on and so on. So I personally would say, whilst it's not bad, there are better opportunities to bet on, including the two that we shall discuss now. Lastly, we come to, I would say, the most popular option, and then my favourite option, and we will start with the latter, and that is Jarrod Bowen. I had all the slides prepared for the transfer plans video before the mic stopped working, and at that point, I was going to say that not only will Jarrod Bowen likely be my transfer in, but at the moment, I'm really eyeing him up for the captaincy. And nothing has changed since, if anything, I've just become increasingly bullish on the prospect of captaining him. And one thing I will say is that I don't think it's like a super straightforward decision, right? For example, let's say Haaland game week 2. I think for everyone, that was probably the most straightforward decision of the season in terms of who to captain. I wouldn't say it's like that, but I do, for me, think he's the best. And I think there's a bit of a gap between him and whoever's next. The fact that he's a mid certainly helps. Again, just higher up so that you're going to get from a forward one for a goal, and then the clean sheet potential as well. But they keep one, I'm not so sure, but at least it's on offer, right? And as Liverpool showed, it's one of the better fixtures, if not one of the best fixtures to have in the league at the moment. Leicester and Southampton are playing each other, and Everton hosts the other relegation-bound side in Ipswich. And you're probably not going to captain an Everton player right or bring them in. And as such, you look at the next best team to target, and I really do think it's Spurs. We'll come on to Man United in the Brian Mbeumo section because he has him next. But for Bowen, I think it's a good game for him stylistically. And I think he's playing Spurs at a very good time. Not only are they playing poorly, but they've obviously got the Europa League as well, right? And that's where their attention and focus will be. Who knows what happens, or I guess we will know what happens tonight in the Europa League game. But even if it's like small things that we don't know about, like, for example, fitness concerns, just overall level of fitness, all type of things that Bowen can capitalize on, the fact it's at home. And I think he's personally looked like he's going to break this 10-point shackle for a while. It just hasn't quite clicked. And I feel like the conditions Spurs provide you with, the fact that it's a game where you can be a little bit freer, you don't have to be as good to create chances because of what they offer you. I think it's a good game for him to kind of break that mark and actually get his first big haul of the season, even if it's just through a brace, right? So yeah, for me, Jarrod Bowen is my favourite captain. I think there's a lot going for him. And yeah, that's about it. Moving on to Brian Mbeumo, who seems very much to be the people's choice in that too by some margin. I get it, but I don't like it as much as others, or I'm not particularly close in my rating of it. I think that United aren't Spurs. And yes, they're in a very similar position. Yes, they have Europa League football. Yes, they'll be tired. And yes, they're battling not to finish 17th. But the defensive proposition is not the same as Spurs. Brentford probably don't blow them away. Like, I don't think United get blown away in this type of game. And as good as Brentford are, the fact that they're at home, the fact they score loads of goals, and Mbeumo and Wissa, for me, I just don't feel overly comfortable captaining someone against Manchester United. I would like to see how he does tonight and how they respond to the pressure of potentially chasing European football. But even if tonight goes really well, I personally just don't think Man United are the team to go after. For me, they've got more to play for in the league than Spurs, or at least it appears that way. I think they're a little bit more concerned with how they finish than Spurs, just from the observations that I've made. I think there's a little bit more pride for them to be had there in the league as opposed to Spurs. And look, that's just a personal observation. You may disagree. That's fair. But that's just how I see it. And as such, I don't think you'll be as much of a rollover as Spurs could be, not will be, but could be on a Sunday afternoon. So yeah, for me, Jarrod Bowen, and that's unlikely to change in team selection tomorrow. That's about it for this video. And that is all she wrote for this one, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed. In solving your problems, let me know what you would like. I will, of course, have benching dilemmas there, but if there is anything else, naturally, just drop it in the comment section. Even if it's a look at a particular captaincy option that I haven't discussed that you really like, a player that you want more insight on, a player that I haven't discussed that you are considering buying, or just an angle that I haven't considered, by all means, please drop it in the comment section below. And if you enjoy the video, make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe if you have not already. I wish you the very best of luck if you have a player in the game tonight, especially if you own Brian Mbeumo. And I will see you on the other side for a combined solving your problems in team selection. But given it's likely you know who I'm going to bring in and who I'm going to take out and who I'm going to captain, that section will be almost certainly shorter and more will be given to solving your problems. So I shall see you then, and have a wonderful day in the meantime. Goodbye.